Welcome back to On the Prowl, presented by Cardiac Cats. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and today I'm joined by Griffin Fisher, a diehard fan of the Kansas City Chiefs. Today we're going to recap the Divisional Round matchup between the Chiefs and Jaguars as we look forward to the rest of the year and what's to come. So welcome back, Griffin. How are you feeling today?
Feeling fine. The Chiefs are once again at the championship round. It's only the fifth time in a year. I'd say we're a little spoiled, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think you guys have officially forgotten what being a losing franchise is like. So I don't really ever entertain the talk about that I hear around town. The woe is me.
I
We
don't
had
think
so
we're
many
gonna
bad years before.
until Mahomes is gone. I don't think we're going to feel that either. What's the worst record we could possibly have with him as long as he plays his best?
Yeah,
Even to break even
11
almost.
and 6 I think is the bare minimum. And that is like a terrible season. So, yeah, you guys are
I don't even
pretty
know what
well
that
set.
feels like anymore. When was the last time Chiefs had 6 losses?
Alex Smith, and usually it
Early
was better
Alex
than
Smith
that. It was
even.
11 and
Yeah,
5.
that was
Yeah.
early Alex Smith. I think his first year was 6.
Yeah, but I mean that's what I hear around town a lot. It's the Chiefs have had it bad, they need to win every year for the next 50 years and they'll make up for it. So I mean it's fair. By those standards, Jacksonville's going to need to win for the next 100 years. Have like 10 Super Bowls in there and maybe that'll make up for the first 25. But we'll see. Maybe I'll change my mind on that. We'll need 150. But yeah, no, went out to the game this last weekend. Didn't expect to. But thank you to Griffin for giving me the tickets. Also, I hate you, Griffin, for giving me the tickets. But yeah, it was the experience wasn't pleasant, I guess. Like as far as fans there, and even one Jaguars fan being a bit obnoxious when we got there. Um, but it was a good game. It was competitive. Um, I think it's the same thing for Jacksonville though, where it's like you just cannot blow that many big moments in a game. Like you've got to have something go your way. When Chad Henne has a pass tipped, you got to intercept it. When you got three guys in the area, or you can't fumble the ball without contact in the red zone, that sort of thing. And so, I'm disappointed with it. I wish the season ended differently, but I think this team's set up really well for the future, and I think right now, especially after watching the Bills game, which is where we'll start things off, they are the third best team in the AFC, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the other team that lost from the AFC that week just looked awful. And this was after all of the hype was them. This is everyone picking Bills to win again, even though the other game looked like the Bengals were the better team for the small bit of the first quarter was played. And it's just the Bills, the whole season, they have been hyped up as the champion. And they just always didn't, every single game they played, they didn't look like it. They didn't really blow out teams. They lost to bad teams. And the Bengals, yet again, got disrespected the whole season. The Bills were crowned champions in the offseason last year after not even making the championship and losing to the Chiefs. That and that finally everything kind of came together. And I think the Bengals had a chip on their shoulder and took it out on the Bills. And that team did not look good.
Yeah, the Bills just, quite frankly, I don't think that they belonged there. And I think that the way their record ended, even being a 13-3 team, I don't think they were that good of a team this year. I really don't. I mean, you look at their games, you look at the way Allen played, he may not have had like many interceptions to end the season, not including postseason, but like the regular season. He still fumbled the ball a ton. He still made stupid throws. He made stupid decisions. He clearly regressed this year. Now you have Stephon Diggs that he went and stormed out of the locker room with all of his belongings just a couple minutes after the game was over, had to be brought back by some undrafted rookie running back, and then proceeded to leave again within 5 minutes. Like, it's a mess over there. And this team had every reason to go win the Super Bowl this year. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't even get to the championship game. I mean, how do you look at that? How do you be a part of that organization and think that this next season you are going to be any better.
Well, you just look at the fact that they're already ranked as the third best chance for the Super Bowl.
They're not even the
I
third best team in the
I don't
conference.
I don't know why the NFL keeps doing this, but they're already being hyped, and they just got killed by the Bengals, and they're already being hyped above the Bengals. I don't understand how this happens. It happened last year when they lost to the Chiefs. They were instantly better than the Chiefs the next week. It's like, oh, they're actually better now, and then
Yeah.
they were better than the Bengals. And I don't know. Next year they won't make the playoffs, and they'll lose to Jacksonville in week 17 or week 18, and they'll have them ranked as number one still probably. I just don't understand why the Bills are just decided everyone decides they're the best team without them actually showing it.
You know what's going to be hilarious though next year is
What?
when the Jets with Derek Carr win that division.
I mean, he goes there, that's a legit shot. They weren't
Like
that far off this year.
these other teams in their division, none of them are like terrible. I mean, the Patriots are just kind of anemic. I mean, they don't really inspire much confidence, but their record's okay. It was like what 8-9 to finish the year, and that's
Yeah, they had a
okay.
shot too.
And then the Jets, like I think they have a good coach. They just need a quarterback because their coach, quite frankly, and their GM have no idea how to draft one. That's why they got Zach Wilson at the start of the draft. But you get him out of the building, you get in a player like Derek Carr. I think you do that, you quite frankly become a playoff contender right off the bat. And the Bills, I just think that like magic and that feeling of we're going to win it, it's going to happen, it's just a matter of time. I think that's fading away or completely faded.
I mean, then look at the Dolphins even in their division. They have a good coach. Tua, if he's able to play and not get concussed anymore, was doing fine. Tyreek Hill had a great season. Jalen Waddle had a great season. All three of the other teams in the division are going to be competitive. And the Bills cannot play these super close games like that and have a shot next year.
I mean,
And
yeah.
I'm going to be a little bit cocky when I say this, but earlier in the season when they played the Dolphins and they lost, and they were crying on the field as if they lost the Super Bowl, I said then that is not a team that wins. That is not a winning team. And I stated that for this whole season. Like, that just doesn't seem like a winning team. They don't cry on the field after losing a regular season game at the start of the season. And I think you saw that immaturity here late in the season too.
That's just
Diggs
what
throwing a fit on the
happens.
sideline.
Yeah. This is the problem when you buy into the hype for your team. It never works out. When you believe what everyone says about you, when it's positive and you think you're unstoppable, you're not going to win. And we dealt with this in Jacksonville this year. Not that people were talking about Jacksonville as the best team in the NFL or anything like what they said for the Bills, but when we went 2-2 to start the year, they were talking about how okay, we're favorites to win the division, like a lot of the schedule's a cakewalk, like we should be fine, until the end of the season, which ironically was when we won all of our games. But the week after, they play Houston in the Tony Baselli Hall of Fame game, like to honor him. And, after Houston, of course, took him from us and ruined our lives because of that, they ruined our lives once again, came into Jacksonville and won 13-6 because that team was not ready to play that because they thought, oh, we're going to win this because we're a good team. We don't need to think about it. We don't need to worry about it. And they struggled with that all year. But hey, they changed and they ended up being a better team at the end of the year and going pretty far in the playoffs. The Bills didn't. They
No,
barely
they did
won
not.
games, but that mentality never changed. They never took the next step. You were expecting them to. For the last half of the year, you thought they're winning these games. All they've got to do is just fix the dang mentality and get their crap together, and they'll probably go win the Super Bowl. And they could not do it. With everyone on their side, everything going their way, they could not figure it out. Other than
Yeah.
some injuries, let's be fair. Von Miller
And
being out hurts them a lot.
Von Miller was big, but they still lose that game with Von Miller. They
Yeah,
just
it wasn't close enough to justify it. It's like the Chargers
and
saying they would have
so
won in week 3 because they got like 3 players back.
you see Allen crying on Tua's shoulder early in the season. You see their offensive coordinator throwing a fit in the box, throwing his stuff around when they
Tom
lose
Brady
to another
moment.
team. Yeah, literally a Tom Brady moment, obliterating a poor tablet. Didn't have anything to do. But and then you see him in this. You see Diggs throwing a fit, trying to run away from the team, as if, and
After
it
yelling at
came
Josh
across
Allen.
like, yeah, and it came across like he thought that he was perfectly fine. It was the rest of the team. It felt like he was blaming everyone else. Instead, he probably should have been running some routes better. I guarantee you, there was plays where he wasn't open. He
Yes,
wasn't just standing there wide open the whole game.
he wasn't perfect in the game, but there was points where like Allen just wasn't looking at him. Like he just went throwing the ball. It was almost like a Russell Wilson game where you see a receiver on the sideline like waving his hands like please throw it to me. I'm 15 yards open. Russell Wilson proceeds to literally look directly at them and then throw it another
Yeah,
direction down the
I
field.
mean it's fair.
Like
Josh Allen,
as a Stephon Diggs fantasy owner, I understand his pain. Because the dude never got thrown the ball in like half the games. They
I
wouldn't
think they
touch him until like the third quarter. It made no sense. It's not like he wasn't open. It's not like he was playing bad. They just refused to use him this season. And quite frankly, if I
but
was him, I would want to be traded away.
there's two ways to look at that, though. Look at the Chiefs. There are plenty of games where Travis Kelce was not getting thrown too much. We just don't throw too much. And it's because Mahomes is trying to pass the ball around, get everyone involved. Almost like you're playing on a playground, trying to make sure all your friends get a catch or two.
Yeah.
Then Travis Kelce hasn't thrown a fit in like 6 years. And I think in that specific playoff game with the Bills and Bengals, I think they were trying to focus on Gabriel Davis. I think they bought their own hype that he's like the greatest playoff wide receiver of all time. It looked like they're just throwing to him every play,
Yeah, they tried to get him going, and it looked
but
like
he
he
did
was
fine.
early on, and then nothing happened. I will say the difference though between the Chiefs and Bills and the regard of how those players react to that. Who are the Bills' other weapons? Dawson Knox, Isaiah McKenzie, Gabriel Davis, who's
Gabriel
good once
Davis,
every 10 games, or Cole
just the
Beasley, who came
playoff.
back off the practice squad. Like, those are your weapons. Whereas in Kansas City, you've had Tyreek Hill for many of those years. Now you have, yeah, not an amazing
And Tyreek Hill
receiver,
kind of
but still
threw a fit in
Juju
this
Smith
offseason.
Schuster. Yeah, that's true.
And
But you've
the
got,
Chiefs got better.
yeah, literally. They have like multiple receivers that are deserving of targets in Kansas City. You know, not world beaters, but good receivers. And quite frankly, the Bills don't have that. And I felt that way in the middle of the season where it's like you look at their roster, they're not really an insanely impressive team on offense. You've got basically Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. And then you've got Gabriel Davis who can break out, Dawson Knox who can break out, but those players are usually sleeping most
Yeah,
games.
honestly, their offensive scheme, so it must be their coordinator, is what seems like it's their biggest issue. They don't run the football. You can't. The winning teams always have to have some sort of run game. Even the Chiefs, when they won the Super Bowl, had Damian Williams. They had a great running back. They had a good postseason. You have to have a run game, even a little bit of one. And the doing the design Josh Allen runs in games where you're up 20 points in the fourth quarter, it felt like they had no clue what they're doing. They knew that Josh Allen was their best player, so they just kept playing Josh Allen.
Well, they don't know how a run game works, so they probably thought their quarterback was the running back.
Well, they legit were top 10 in rushing yards
Yeah.
with Josh Allen.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. He's a good running back,
So
kind of like
that
Lamar
was their
Jackson.
run game. Not a great strategy, I wouldn't think, to have your starting quarterback be your run game, but what do I know?
Yeah, nothing bad can happen.
Yeah, I look
But
at RG3. He had a great career.
yeah, I mean, what's gonna happen is if they keep running him like that, they're gonna get him killed one of these seasons, and then they're gonna make his career shorter.
Oh, I said it
Like,
about
I don't
Derrick
even
Henry
think
last
he's
year.
gonna stick around longer than Mahomes. I think he's gonna be out a few years before.
Oh, he'll be out probably even more years before. You can see that Mahomes is learning how to not have to scramble, not have to run, and he's getting better at that. Josh Allen is yet to even prove that. Sure, he can still throw it deep, but when it comes down to it, he just scrambles and he
Yeah,
runs.
he's becoming a raw prospect again somehow, but
He's
I think we know
reverting.
that's
He's
Dable at
legit
this point.
getting worse.
Yeah. Speaking of Dable, to not just spend the whole show crapping on the Bills.
I would love to do
Um,
that.
yeah, I know you would. But the Giants and Brian Dable, not a good game on Saturday. Made me feel a little better driving home. I will say that. But I think it was a 38-7 loss. Just even with a great season, I mean, you got to be concerned if you're the Giants because that's your competition in your division. When you're competing, it starts with winning your division. Then it goes to winning your conference, and then it goes to winning the Super Bowl, which is just one game that you got to win.
It's basically already shown they're not going to win the division.
Yeah, and to be fair, like winning the division, the conference might mean the same thing. You know, if the Eagles win on Sunday, I mean, if you're better than the Eagles, you're winning the conference. You know, or you have a really huge shot of it. But they just look completely outclassed right now, and you know, as much of a good coach as Dable is, you know, they're going to need to accumulate more talent. They're going to need some time to go by. Like they are, despite having as a very similar season at Jacksonville, their situation's so much worse.
Yeah, that game was boring to say the least.
Yeah,
It came down to what most people thought deep down was going to happen. Of course, I wanted the Giants to win. I thought that they'd have a shot. I like Daniel Jones' story, but I think everyone kind of hopped on the Daniel Jones train, including myself, a little bit too quick. He is not a lead you to a championship quarterback. He's a great piece that you could work around. But that Giants team, and then this is the first year. They're just now starting on this little run with their Saquon Barkley healthy again and new coach, but they aren't ready. And that's just what that game came down to. The Eagles were just better in every aspect.
yeah. I think they can stick with Jones and keep him for a while because when you're wanting to move on and get a new quarterback, you need to make sure the quarterback you're getting is going to be among the elite. Like it's better like you don't want to
Yeah, they can
be
work
the
with Jones.
Giants, get rid of Daniel Jones and then go draft like Will Levis and then Will Levis ends up being like okay, you know, or just a like a Derek Carr. And like not that Derek Carr's bad at all, but it's not really an upgrade, right? And you just threw away a first round pick. So
They
if
can't.
I'm them, like build your weapons around him. I mean, you don't have anything in the receiving game.
Yeah, that's fair, but you just can't sign him to a big contract. You can do a 2-year deal. You can franchise tag him. I just don't think you can settle like, okay, this is 100% it. He had one solid season finally. You have to at least have one more season of him proving to be a starting caliber quarterback, I think.
He shouldn't have a big contract. I don't see that happening.
It's too risky for how he plays too. He's also scrambling and rushing for yards all the time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a similar quarterback looking through these deals. Yeah, the average per year. Oh man, they might have to pay him. I would say probably about 25 to 30 million. Like Ryan Tannehill, he gets just under 30 million a year.
You can
And
probably get away
then,
with that in the
yeah, I
Giants.
think 25 to 30 would be where I'd
The
hit, and
Giants
I'd
should
feel
get
fine with that.
Hopkins.
They
That'd
should.
be a good weapon.
That would actually be a good move. I think they should draft someone though too. Like
Oh
they
yeah,
might
they need to
look at
build the
trading up.
offense completely.
Yeah, and if you want to draft a receiver, unfortunately, you have to trade up at this point because they fly off the board so fast. I mean, even though like we may look at the draft like, oh, let's get a nice receiver in like the 5th or 6th round that's a speed threat for the offense, they're probably all going to be gone in the 3rd because these
Yeah,
teams are just
you saw it
flipping out
last
at the
year.
position. Yeah, like
And how many good wide receivers were there last year? A few that turned out to be good.
oh, it
Maybe
was not
one or
worth
two
it. Like
that look like they could be great in the future.
yeah, I mean, Alec Pierce was a guy that I wanted on like the 3rd or 4th round, and that dude should have been available. Heck, even in the 4th round, maybe, or the late 3rd. And he was gone in the middle of the 2nd, actually high in the 2nd, if I remember correctly. He went to the Colts, and he
It
was
is.
actually good, but like they're just flying off the board like a round or two
How
early.
many have a chance of being a wide receiver one in the future, though? Pickens,
Barely any.
Olave, and I
Garrett
thought there's
Wilson
one more.
is.
Wilson.
Um, Drake London can
Eh,
he was pretty good. He wasn't like perfect or
He's in a
anything. I
bad
think Wilson was
situation.
better. Yeah, if they figure out quarterback long term, they'll be fine. Um, Other than that, I'm trying to think of the other receivers go off the board. Traylon Burks is not a number one. He was okay to finish
He
the year,
wasn't on
but
a he was on a bad situation also though.
yeah,
I
they
don't think he's
need
gonna be
him
number
to
one, but he could be
break
solid
out.
somewhere.
So there's really not a whole lot of number one receivers in this
But
upcoming
people
year.
act
You've
like they're a
got
hot commodity though. They're
yeah,
like, oh, we gotta get these right away.
you've
Trade up,
probably
trade up.
I think you've got in this next draft maybe like two of them. Like you've got Quentin Johnston, who should be a number one. He's like the best prospect. Jordan Assen maybe. Um, but heck, I mean they even talk about him as a slot, I think. And maybe one guy later on in the draft works. But they'll all be gone in the first and second round. People will throw away their picks and then it'll be great because you'll have some great edge rusher sitting there or a
You,
cornerback
you
or
see
whatever
what
position it is. I
you see
mean,
what both of
that's
our teams did last year. They
yeah,
just
they
took what
didn't
was
draft a
there
wide
and it
receiver
worked
and
great.
yeah, I mean, we still need to see how these prospects work out,
Man,
but like
Sky Moore
they
might
should
be
be
a starting
fine.
wide receiver in the future.
Yeah, you guys did take a wide receiver. Oh gosh. That might not have been a good pick, but we'll
It
see. We'll let it work
he's
out.
still yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we had Tony, we had other wide receivers who had great seasons. I think the Chiefs thought that surely all of these wide receivers there's going to be two or three that suck, and they all kind of did fine. So Sky Morris didn't really have a shot. I hope he's good, but yeah, he's not a wide receiver one. He's not going to develop into that. You can
Yeah.
just see it. He'll be a great slot guy at his best.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at last year, like Devin Lloyd was for a lot of people a top 10 prospect in the draft before the draft finished. And we got him at 27 because everyone was flying to wide receiver. They were picking their positions. I couldn't believe he dropped as far as he did. And I was thrilled when we got him because he was like, I was begging the Jaguars to get him all night. And I hope he works out better than Chase on because I felt the same way about Chase on. Um,
And
that did not work
Karloftis
out.
was in the low teens in
Yeah,
a lot of drafts.
Karloftis fell. Trent McDuffie did as well.
He
In
fell
all
5 or 6
fairness,
spots, not a ton, but yeah,
yeah,
he got lower.
he shouldn't have been available where he was. And Devin Lloyd, like he started the year off as defensive rookie of the month, fell off in the middle of the season, but he finished strong. Not perfect. I did hear something kind of disgusting. He literally on one of the plays that like extended one of your drives, I think, or no, it set you guys up for a field goal in the game this last Saturday. His mouth guard fell out of his mouth, and as the play started, he literally went to go pick it up, and Travis Kelsey beat him. I was
Oh
just like,
no.
"What? How does that happen?"
The
but
magic of the Chiefs.
yeah, I know it's just this like
Woo!
perfect everything go right mentality. Don't worry about a thing. Until that one game once in a while where everything explodes, and then life's ruined until the next week.
That'll happen next season, hopefully. Well, that was a good
It might.
conversation about the Giants and Eagles.
I know, right? We're getting distracted. I'm fine with this. Good topics.
No, that was
The
great. I mean, that was a good segment.
Yeah. Now the other games, I don't think we'll talk too much more on Jacksonville. We kind of went over it in simple before, and it's painful to think about. But
It was just
we,
mistakes on Jacksonville that
yeah,
cost them the game. That's what it
it
boils down to.
it will
They
kind
kind
of,
of lost it themselves.
yeah. It was they could have won that game, but the Chiefs won it. They played the better game. They earned it. And we'll talk more about the future in the next segment. But the other game we'll talk about just for a short minute here, Cowboys and 49ers. Looked like the Cowboys might be able to win this. Might have had I actually thought would be a fun NFC championship as much as I don't care for the Cowboys. Them going into Philadelphia, there would have been some casualties in that game, like literal
There would have been
deaths.
some cities burned down.
That would have been great. That would have been great because I don't live there.
I don't I don't understand how the Cowboys keep doing this. I
They have Dak
it,
Prescott. That's
it's
how they
got to
keep
be
doing it. They
so
have Mike
bad.
McCarthy. That's how
They've
they
had
keep doing
two
it. They have
shots
Jerry
now
Jones. That's how they
at a
keep doing
game-winning
it.
drive. Two shots down back-to-back years. Even if Mahomes did that with two shots at game-winning drives back-to-back years, I would be worried. But this is Dak Prescott just showing that he's not the guy. and yet they just do the same thing every year. The Cowboys are just destined to fail. And then I don't understand how you are a Cowboy. How do Cowboys fans deal with this? They get so optimistic
They
right
drink,
after.
they break TVs. That's what I've
Yeah, did you
seen.
see all the TVs broken
Yeah,
in the there were tons. I saw 3 separate videos of this year. And then a week later from now, they'll be just as optimistic about next season. I don't understand how they do this. It's got to be hard on them mentally.
yeah. I couldn't take it if I was a Cowboys fan. Oh, it'd be awful. But yeah, I mean, they, quite frankly, I don't think they're going to win Super Bowl with the group they have. I don't think they can. I think the buying in the hype kills them too. And you look at their one win in the playoffs. Yeah, they won it by a good margin, but like it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers
They
at
beat
eight and
the
nine with
worst team
Tom
in the
Brady,
playoffs.
like
Yeah.
trying to carry a dead corpse into the playoffs. Yeah, I mean they were the worst team in the playoffs. Like I think if Seattle faced Tampa Bay, Seattle would have won that game.
I think Seattle could have beat the Cowboys.
Now, Seattle could have. Yeah, that's true. It's a good point. Depends on who's
That'd have been a
hosting
real good
too.
story.
That would have been great. But yeah, I mean Dallas, terrible last play. Brock Purdy advances. We might, we could possibly, not necessarily that we are, but we could possibly be witnessing another season like Tom Brady's first season with Brock Purdy because came out of nowhere. Brock Purdy's even later in the draft now because he's the last pick of the draft, Mr. Irrelevant, whereas Brady was like sixth round
The
somewhere.
only thing better would be a free agent like Kurt Warner. That's the only other tier above this.
Yeah. And so you've got him leading his team to the NFC Championship. Problem is, though, every team left is going to be a death match. I mean, Philadelphia didn't even struggle
It's the
in their
best
game.
defense versus the best offense in that game.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for the 49ers to win that game. And I don't think they will, to prelude that, but I think they could. It's possible. And after that, you got to face either Mahomes or Burrow. I mean, that's when the NFC task gets really tall because you got all the good quarterbacks over in the AFC, and you're bound to face one of them.
Yeah, and both of them would be coming off a huge win. Burrow would either be setting his team into place as the head of the AFC for years to come, or it'd be Mahomes playing on a hurt injury, but then overcoming that and then having 2 weeks to rest after.
Yeah,
So both of those are not ideal situations to play against.
yeah, you don't want to be an NFC team this year. I think most likely whoever wins the Bill or sorry, not Bills. I don't know why I thought they would advance. That's like a foreign concept. But the Chiefs and Bengals game, I think whoever wins that is probably your Super Bowl champion this year. I
And
think
I
they're
think
just the better teams
the
because of
NFC
quarterback.
teams have just been overrated this year. I think when you see them play AFC teams, like when the Eagles played the Jaguars, it was a rainy game, which should have benefited the Eagles. That's what their team was built around, is running. And
Yeah,
the Jaguars about won that, really.
we should have won if there wasn't
They
rain.
another
It
game
was
they hurt themselves in.
Yeah, I mean that one was obnoxious because they were about to go up 21-0 and then Lawrence fumbled the ball by himself, I'm pretty sure, again, and then he fumbled it three more times and threw a pick. I mean, it was like crazy, and they still were like
Yeah,
29
it
to
was still
21.
not that far
I
off.
mean, they had a chance to win at the end with all those things happening. So, yeah,
I just don't think the NFC teams are as good. I
I
think
think they
they're
have better roster construction, but their coaching isn't as good. Like more talent, just I mean, they don't have Andy Reid, or Zach
yeah, I think
Taylor.
their teams are more evenly built. I'd agree to that.
Yeah, maybe Kyle Shanahan compares pretty well. Nick
No, he's had a
Sirianni's
great
good,
year.
but I just think Andy Reid's like a tier above, and then the Bengals just got something going with the
Zach
mentality.
Taylor.
Yeah, he's
He's the
good now.
worst. I don't know. He might be better than Sirianni. Sirianni's only had a year now to really show himself.
Yeah,
A
and a
good
lot
one
of
good
that
year.
team being good is just the amazing job that general manager has done. Like I've followed their moves, and it's brilliant what they do. I mean, they find ways to not only have one of the most talented rosters, but to have multiple draft picks in the years to come. Like they have 2 first rounders this next year. They fleeced the Saints out of their first rounder because they last year they had 3 that they could have selected with, and then they traded. I think they traded 2 of their first rounders that year for the Saints' first rounder in that season, their second rounder, and their first rounder this year. And their first rounder this year is like fourth, or no, it's not fourth. It's like 7, 8, or 9, I think. So I mean, they killed them on that trade deal. Like they're
Who did
just
the
a
Saints pick
brilliant
up?
team. The Saints, they got Olave, and
Was
then
that their first pick?
yeah,
Oh gosh.
Chris Olave and Trevor
I mean, he's
Penning.
fine.
I think the
It seems
Eagles
like
might have the
expensive to
second
do
rounder
though.
this year, actually, because the Saints picked with their second rounder
No, the
the year
Eagles
before.
have executed an almost perfect season. We just got to
They,
see if they can do it 2 more games.
yeah, they've done about everything perfect. It's just you gotta go win it now, you know. But yeah, we can go ahead and wrap up the weekly recap unless you got anything else.
Nope, I think that's pretty much all of it.
All right, so we'll kind of wrap up the season for the Jaguars with all things Duval, and I got a few things I want to talk about. This is mainly just pertaining to the future here. Um, the first thing, probably won't spend too much time on it, but the Jaguars, they'll be in a crap crunch this next season, and so they're going to probably have to. I'm sorry, it's not probably. They're going to have to decide who's not going to come back to the team because they're not going to have enough money for it. And so there's some different approaches they can take. They could look to move on from Juwan Taylor, which would suck, but quite frankly, he's going to be one of the most expensive of them. And you have Walker Little on the roster. Um, so Juwan Taylor could be someone they don't look to bring back. Evan Ingram, I couldn't imagine them not having him back, but he will cost a bit, probably $9 million a year. And I think that's worth it, but simply the money isn't really there for all of these guys to come back. That's another person they could look at,
You have to pick
moving
and
on from.
choose.
Yeah, you've got to pick and choose. The third option, and one that people want to, I guess they've wanted to believe it's real for the last month or two, but it seemed kind of foreign or not possible, when you look at the situation from the outside. But quite frankly, I think it is possible. They could look to trade away Cam Robinson, our left tackle. And so the logic in that is that you have, I think, 45 million you still owe him right now. And the way that trades work, the teams that are trading the player away, they still have to pay for the signing bonus on the contract, and they can negotiate with the other team to take on a portion of the contract if needed. I don't think Jacksonville would need to. So essentially, they paid him 7 million this year to start. They would, if they traded him, they would pay 10 million of what's left. So they'd pay him 17 million to have played for 1 year. That cap hit is spread across multiple seasons. And that's only a million more than what the franchise tag was. So it's very comparable. Now, if they traded him to a team like, say, New England or Cincinnati, where they need a left tackle right now, that team would be paying 35 million over 2 years, which is actually surprisingly about market value for what a left tackle is. And Cam Robinson has been a pretty solid left tackle. But for the Jaguars, the best lineup they've had is when they've had Walker Little on the left side and Jawan Taylor on the right side. And you saw it especially in the playoffs, where like against the Chargers, Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa had almost no impact on the game. I mean, they got shut down. And then even against Kansas City, Walker Little did pretty good, aside from the tripping call, but they didn't allow sacks really when they were on the field. I mean, Jawan Taylor had like a couple games where he was just off, but the majority of the season he's not even giving up pressures. And so you look at that situation, and that's another option that they have because you could have more cap space available trading Robinson and bringing back Taylor. So I don't know how much of a grasp you have on all the players in Jacksonville, But I mean, out of all those guys, like who would you want to move on from?
I think you're pretty spot on with trading him. I think that there's enough teams who would want him, and you guys need the money. That's pretty smart. And your O line really did do fine for most of that game. There was a decent amount
It's
of
the
pressures, but
interior.
that's what Spagnuolo does.
Yeah.
He has cornerback and safety blitzes all the time. And the O line did pretty well. Chris Jones still doesn't have a sack in the playoffs. I don't know how that's possible.
It's
He
weird.
gets worse. And he gets pressures still in the playoffs, but he just doesn't have sacks.
Oh, and to be fair, so Frank Clark, he got the one sack on Walker Little. So Walker Little did give up a sack. But if you look back at that play, that's because Lawrence moves up in the pocket directly into Frank Clark. Like
Yeah.
Walker Little's blocking him just fine, but Lawrence tries to move up and gets sacked. So I mean, I
Yeah,
think
that
like
O line did pretty good, especially compared to the last time they played.
they did
Lawrence
better
got
for
killed
sure.
in that game.
Yeah, it was like I think they had
5 sacks.
2 or 3 this time. The biggest problem I saw was like blown. I don't know if you call it blown coverages or what, but like there was
The
plays
people
where
just,
there was a free
yeah.
rusher up the middle,
And
and
that's just
so
Spagnuolo. That's a younger team versus a veteran defensive coordinator.
yeah, oh for sure. And I think when I look at this, they need to get a left guard. That they definitely need to look at that, and if they do that, I think the offensive line's pretty well set. But if you move on from Cam Robinson, not only do you help your cap situation and probably, actually not probably, you would have enough money to bring back all of your players that you want to, as long as you're not putting a lot of money on this next season. If you backload the contract, you'll be able to negotiate it. Um, they can get everyone back if they send away Cam Robinson. And the next year, you would have more money available because you don't have Cam Robinson's contract on the books, and Taylor is going to be cheaper. I think the projection right now is like 14 million a year, whereas Robinson was 17 million. So I just think when I look at that, like that's the approach I would take. And something tells me that the Jaguars know that's an option because of the way they structured that contract. I mean, these teams, they have to think about all the possibilities, all the risks they're taking. And originally, they franchise tagged him because the plan was to have him play just for another season and see if he's good. And I think the only risk they ran in signing the long term contract was if he wasn't good. Because if he's not good, you can't trade him. You're stuck with the money. You've got to keep him for another season, and it's like 20 million something, at least until 2024. So that's the
I
approach I would take.
I I think that's the most logical, just because you have to keep Ingram. That was you turned a wide receiver or a tight end who was a joke into a legit threat, and you have to keep the rest of the O line. I think you just have to. I mean, that makes the most sense out of those scenarios.
Yeah, that keeps together your playoff roster because Cam Robinson wasn't on the field at the end of the season. I mean, he went out, I think, what was it, like right before? No, it was the Dallas game, I'm pretty sure he went out. So he was out for a while, and they played well without him. The offensive line was not a problem. It's just the interior they got to work on. It's quite frankly just left guard is the one place they need to upgrade.
I think, yeah. I mean, if something happens and you get rid of multiple of those players, you just have to keep Ingram. That's
Yeah,
how I see that.
he's the number one priority for me out of all the free agents. And I think that'll happen because he wants to stay here. He didn't even really care about football, quite frankly, until he came to Jacksonville. Like you watch his interview and you listen to him, that's the vibe you get from that. And we
And
got to keep players like that want to be
are
here.
those the biggest free agents?
Yeah, Dewan Spoon and Arden Key are free agents. And you can get them back. Both of them are pass rushers.
I wouldn't want Kiki's evil.
Yeah, of course. Because every person who touches Mahomes is evil and intentionally tries to
That's how
murder
it
him.
is. It hurt
Yeah,
my
but
quarterback.
Chris Jones, it was just an accident when he landed on like Nick Foles' neck with all of his body weight.
It
Yeah, I'm
was. But I'm
exaggerating, of
not gonna
course,
blame
but
you for. I wouldn't blame you for being mad at him though. That's the franchise. And I mean, without
yeah,
that,
Nick
maybe you
Foles
guys
was our
don't have
franchise.
Lawrence. Yeah, you're in a better spot now. So you're welcome for
Sure.
Chris Jones accidentally help hurting Foles.
No, 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 I don't agree with that.
But I mean, if those are your top free agents, the Jaguars are in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, they're in a spot where they should be fine. And they've just got to be creative. That's the biggest thing. Have creativity. If you're not creative, your team's not going to be much better. But you saw it with like the Calvin Ridley trade, where they traded for a player who hasn't been on the field for a while, but if he comes back and plays like he was, he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. And you're paying him 11 million this year, and at most you're giving up a second rounder and I think a sixth or a fourth. I mean, what team would not take that deal? Look at the Bears trade for Chase Claypool. The draft pick they gave up for Chase Claypool will, no, regardless of how Calvin Ridley does or what capital we end up giving up once all the terms are met and that's all figured out. They gave up more draft capital for Chase Claypool than we did for Calvin Ridley because we were creative.
And you weren't morons and tried to get Chase Claypool.
Thank God. People are trying to say go get Chase Claypool, and no,
I
we
don't know
got a
where that
different
came
guy with a
from. I
C.
never saw a single moment of him being an elite wide receiver.
He's a perennial
McCole
has the
Hardman's
talent to
better.
be great but not great receiver.
McCole
McCall
Hardman is
Hardman,
infinitely better.
yeah,
And there's no demand for McCole Hardman on teams.
yeah. The Bears really screwed that one up. And it's even the 32nd pick of the draft because they were the worst team, and the Dolphins forfeited their pick. So it's
Oh
bad.
yeah.
It's really bad. They won't get the fifth year option like other first round picks get, but they'll be picking where the end of the first round is. So go Steelers. um, Other things to talk about. We'll talk shortly about the draft here, and I want to talk about next season more. But the draft selection in the first round, there's a few different ways they can go. And so for you're looking at the Jaguars roster. Assume that at all these positions, there's a player that is equally talented as all the others. So there's not like a better player at pass rusher than there is a guard or anything like that. So you have high profile slot corner. Like you could go after someone like that. You could go after a pass rusher. You could go after a guard, or you could go after another position. What would you think would be the best idea for the Jaguars?
You guys need a pass rusher.
Agreed.
The amount of pressures the Jaguars get without getting sacks is insane. It's almost unrealistic to look at it. It doesn't make sense. If you get an elite pass rusher, or even just a really good pass rusher, that should put just enough more pressure to where people get home.
Yeah, and they're hinting as well that Trayvon Walker might move to the inside a bit more. They've said a few things since the season ended about that. And so if they move him inside, then you're going to have, even if he's not permanently there, there's going to be a bit more of an opening to have another pass rusher on this roster. And so what I would like is if the Jaguars can find a way to address most of these other needs, like try to get a guard in free agency if you have enough money available. There are people that could work there and you
The
wouldn't have to
Chiefs
pay a
have a
ton.
lot of depth on their roster. You legitimately get, and I mean
I
the
don't want your
Chiefs depth.
backup as a starter,
No, I
but
mean Nick Allegretti is not just a backup. He could be starting. We've just kept him because we saw what happened the year that all of our wide or offensive linemen went down. That would be a legit acquisition. I don't know if the Chiefs would even give him up though.
yeah, I mean,
But there are lots of guards. That's kind of the point I was making.
you
There
can
are
get a
guards that
guard.
aren't starting who are starting caliber on teams where they just have them as backups because a good guard can basically fill in out anywhere.
Yeah, and we technically don't have to address it. I think we should, but Ben Barch was our starter early this year at guard, and he was, I think, a third round selection a couple years back in 2020. and he played pretty good for the Jaguars this season. But the way I see it, like you probably still want to draft someone there, but I would look at a guard and say the second round, or you're going after someone in free agency. But hey, at the end of the day, you are gonna try to draft the best player available. So I mean, maybe you don't go after a pass rusher, but I could see someone good being available. I know I've got a couple names I like on the board right now, but there will be more research done, and hopefully the Jaguars do good with the draft. But let's wrap this section up talking about this next season. So the Jaguars, do you think that they could win the Super Bowl next season?
I 100% think they could.
It's just they
It would still be
won't, you don't
hard.
think?
They'd still have to get through the Chiefs or the Bengals or both possibly. And the
Yeah,
Bills are not going to be a pushover. They'll still
they
be
might be.
there. I would
I was just
love that.
messing
That'd be
around,
hilarious to
obviously, but
watch the
yeah,
Jaguars go in and trounce the Bills. But I mean, they're still going to be hard teams to get through. But I'd be lying if I said they couldn't. They can beat the Bengals, especially if, and this depends on Ridley, I think. But if Ridley comes in and he's right away starting caliber receiver again, or he develops through the season back to that position, that is enough threats that you guys should be able to beat the Bengals and beat the Chiefs. So I do think it's open. I don't think it's you'd be the favorites, but I could. There's no way you're not top 5 out of the AFC.
we gotta be top four. I mean, I don't even think top five because what team like that hasn't won their division this year takes that huge step forward? To be
It
fair,
depends on if Tom Brady goes to the Raiders
yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe
or
they'll
Aaron
go eight
Rodgers
and
goes to the
nine this
Titans.
year. That's not that's not happening. Sorry. No, they're gonna
But
trade for Trey Lance like they've been
I
talking
mean,
about on Twitter.
I
And
was
they
thinking,
Trey Lance, the bear prospect,
I
but
was
Trevor
thinking
Lawrence is just
maybe
unproven.
Chargers if they get Sean Payton. That's what I was thinking.
But they aren't. They already kept their head coach.
Did they actually
Yes.
announce that? Oh
Well, I
my
mean
gosh!
they fired the OC, I think, or the no,
Oh,
it was the OC and
problem
like the
solved now.
quarterbacks coach or something. Yeah, they took half measures, so you're good. You've won the division
Woo!
next year.
Division's back again. Arrowhead, yeah.
The only problem you're gonna have is if Sean Payton goes to Denver and starts putting bounties on Mahomes. That's the
That might be an
big
issue.
issue. I could see that. I believe that could happen, but
Well,
hopefully
Sean
not.
Payton still says he didn't know that was coming.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Kind of like Tom
But
Brady didn't know about the
I would
deflated
very
balls.
much like him not going in the division, please. That'd be nice.
Yeah, well, there's just one team you got to worry about, and it's Denver, and it's a hellhole. So maybe you'll be all right. Now here's how I feel about it. When you look at the schedule the Jaguars have, and you look at the games they're hosting and the games they're going away for, I think that there is a legitimate shot that the Jaguars can get the first seed next year. I think they're absolutely in that conversation. And here's why. Let's just run through this list. Your divisional games. You have Tennessee, Indy, and Houston, one at home, one away. You're probably sweeping Houston and Indy, right? Like you would expect that.
Yeah,
And
that's fair.
then Tennessee, you could sweep them. You could go 6-0 in the division, but say you lose one of those games because they just pull off dark magic.
I mean, it's division rival still.
Yeah. So you lose like one division game. You're 5-1. Your other games, these are your home opponents. You host the Baltimore Ravens, might not have Lamar Jackson, Atlanta Falcons, Cincinnati Bengals, Carolina Panthers, Kansas City Chiefs, San Francisco 49ers. Those include a lot of your other hard games, but you're hosting them all. Kansas City, I do think we win that because they're going to care a lot about that game, and you're going to have Calvin Ridley coming in. That will be a very important game for Jacksonville. Carolina, you win. I think like you probably lose against San Francisco. The
I'd say maybe
Bengals, you
2
might
losses
lose
out of that.
against. You're either losing against the Bengals or the Ravens, and then
It's
you're
either
losing
2
against
or
San
3
Francisco.
losses in that stretch.
Yeah. So out of all those games I've mentioned, all the division games and all the home games, There's 2 or 3 losses. And then your away games: the Cleveland Browns, the New Orleans
Win,
Saints, the Tampa
win,
Bay Buccaneers, the
win,
Pittsburgh Steelers, and the
win,
Buffalo Bills.
probably win. There's maybe one
I
loss in that
think
stretch somewhere.
3
You
or
give up
4
a game.
losses. That's what you're looking at next year. Probably 4. But if they go 13-4 next season, that could be good enough to win the
The other
whole
teams have harder
conference.
schedules too. The other division leaders,
Yeah,
they all have
because we
harder
have
matchups.
arguably the best division to match up against in the AFC and the best division to match up against in the NFC. So
Now,
I'm looking at that. I'm like, I'm absolutely going to entertain the idea that the Jaguars could host the playoffs. I think it's possible. And
if you get the first seed, it's incredibly possible because you'd play the weakest team remaining, and then you'd only have to beat one of the juggernaut teams probably,
you host them.
and you
Eh,
host them. That's
Yeah.
huge.
So like I think a big thing for this team, it is imperative for them to have been able to host this game against Kansas City next year, because I think they just need to see that they can win. Like they at both these games they played against them, it just felt like they were kicking themselves in the foot. They were just like they were doing something to prevent themselves from winning, and they could have won them, but they didn't. And so I
I
think when
think
you have home field advantage, you're going to have all the fans there. Like that will be a packed house for that game. It has to be, because that's going to be to the fans the same as the Patriots revenge game. You know,
it'll
not as
almost
big
be a
of a
third
deal,
as
but
loud as.
yeah, sure
I'm,
thing.
I'm
Sure
joking.
thing.
It'll
Because the
be
fans
it'll
are
be loud.
inferior.
You
How
guys as
dare,
fans have been rejuvenated. It's fine. I'm
yeah,
joking.
how dare Trevor Lawrence like
It will be
even
Arrowhead,
attempt
but it'll
to
be
be
pretty loud.
nice to his fan base? Um, yeah, like it's going to be the perfect environment for the Jaguars to win that game. And maybe they don't, but I think they should win that. And you finally beat Mahomes, you finally feel confident about that. And then if you get in the number 1 seed, which you have the tiebreaker over them, and hopefully you beat the Bengals, of which you're going to want to have Lawrence finally beat Burrow, then you're probably hosting the playoffs as long as you don't just implode at some point in the season. And so you play probably the AFC East champion, which would be like Buffalo or Miami or New York if they get a really good quarterback somehow. And then you're playing either the Bengals or the Chiefs. So
And I think
it's got to
it
happen, but
determines.
there's a good scenario here for the Jaguars.
I think it's up to the NFL to decide if it wants you guys to have that run or not, though, because if they stack it heavy on the front, I don't think Ridley will have as much time to get fully involved with the team. I think he'll be a clear wide receiver 1 halfway through the season. So if the NFL doesn't want the Jaguars to get there, they will set it up in a way where all of those big games are right away. I think you want them in the middle and towards the end of the season.
I just kind of want it to be like mixed, over the season. Like I don't really want a hard stretch or an
Yeah, that'd be the
easy
best for
stretch. Like
development.
maybe
That's what I'm
easy
saying, though,
stretch
is
at the end.
you've seen
But
the
even
NFL set up
that,
the
like,
schedule, though.
yeah, I mean, I want to be ready for the playoffs when the playoffs come. I don't want to come off a ton of easy games. I so yeah, I think looking at that schedule, it looks really good for Jacksonville. It looks great, and I think that they could go and win the division and win the They'll take the first seed in the conference next year, and if they do that, they're in a really good spot to advance to the Super Bowl. But it's gonna happen. I'm just saying. I think they've got a really good road ahead of them. So that's all I've got on the Jaguars. So if you want, we can go ahead and talk about the Chiefs and Bengals, Eagles, 49ers, but obviously the Chiefs more. So
Yeah. I mean, I'll start at the Eagles 49ers. I think that one's should be quick.
okay,
It it is. It actually should be. It might be a better game than the Chiefs Bengals in a way. It could be really boring or it could be super exciting since it's the top defense versus the top offense. So you're kind of guessing which one's going to give first. Will the 49ers get a pick or will Jalen Hurts just march down the field every drive? It's going to be it'll be interesting to watch. I
yeah,
think this is kind of the game for Purdy. I think even if they lose the Super Bowl, if Purdy wins this game and he doesn't throw a pick, he has a solid game, he's the quarterback. But if he loses here and he throws some picks and it's kind of his fault, then the 49ers entertain the idea of Trey Lance again. Then they actually think about it. Then they look through the offseason. It's like, well, what could we do here? Should we go get Tom Brady? But if they win, I think Purdy's their quarterback. This game's almost the most important for Purdy.
This game probably decides whether Brady goes there or not. That's how I feel about it. Because if you
So
lose,
in that case, we want the Eagles to win
again. Yeah.
No, we want the 49ers
no,
to win so he doesn't go there. Yeah.
Exactly. So you got to root for the 49ers. And you're already doing it because you want to kill them again for only
the Chiefs
reason.
beat them earlier in the season. They didn't have Christian McCaffrey, but the rest of that team was mostly healthy, and they killed them. So I think they've got a system that beats them.
Yeah, so I think this game goes to the Eagles. I just think they're the better team, and they showed on in the divisional round that they aren't rusty. They aren't like just a show of their former self. They're exactly who they've been all year.
And they showed most importantly,
really
Hurts is
important for them
healthy.
to show. Yeah, and Hurts looked great. And now you're hosting the 49ers, who struggled on the offense that game, didn't get a lot going. And now they got to face like one of the best defenses in the NFL again.
Yeah, I think it's you have to look at it from the opposite of what they're best at. So which is better, the 49ers offense or the Eagles defense? And I think that would be the Eagles defense, but with
not against the run. Not against the run, though.
And Christian McCaffrey's been great. I'm going to go 49ers just because I think Kyle Shanahan's going to outcoach Sirianni. I think that's what's going to come down to, and his scheme will be better.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be a big Jalen Hurts game. I think this is the game where he just
earns a contract,
takes over.
Big contract.
Yeah,
which I guess he's already probably got the big contract.
Yeah,
add a couple more million
to it.
To
figure out his contract because he's a second round pick, so he doesn't have
he's getting paid.
Option. This is his third year, so yeah, this is a big contract game for him.
He's trying to pump up his numbers this game.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, getting her $10 million.
Because he's already getting $40 million. I think.
Yeah.
High 30s, low 40s. He's already getting that. He wins this game. He's pushing towards the middle of the 40s, and that's a lot of money. So,
I think he's around there too. I could see that. I think the Eagles are going to win this, though. I just think they're the better team. The 49ers are great too, but I do think they need a quarterback. And so I think what's going to happen is I think they're going to come up short in this. I think it'll be competitive, but they're going to bring in Brady this offseason, have him come in, lead that team, and do one last act of desperation in his career.
No.
And hopefully he doesn't go very far because that actually kind of horrifies me for the Jaguars because if we want to win the Super Bowl next year, I don't want to play.
Run,
yeah, I don't want to play Tom
Bengals
Brady
in the championship round and then just lose to Tom Brady again.
Yeah, or no, we get a revenge against the Chiefs and then Tom Brady kills us. It'd be awful. Worst thing in the world. So I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think that's a good encore game. The Eagles 49ers for the main chorus later that night.
Yeah.
The Chiefs Bengals. Oh gosh. I wanted to play them because I think Arrowhead is great. I think that's a big advantage. It's over even the worst Bills. But now that I saw how bad the Bills were, I kind of wish we played them.
Yeah.
I think the Chiefs would have just as easily beat that team, even with a one-legged Mahomes.
Oh,
but
100%.
Now with Mahomes, and I'm guessing he'll be playing on probably 80% of what he is, which is still top 5 quarterback in the NFL. But the issue is that he has to be number 1 quarterback for us to win this game. For the Chiefs to win, he has to be great because the Bengals are just overall better. Their offense technically isn't as good as the Chiefs, but that's deceptive. Their wide receiver core is so great that against a bad Chiefs secondary, that's going to be insane. It's I'm worried. Obviously, I should be. They just crushed the Bills. They've beat the Chiefs 3 times in a row. But at the same time, you have to think that Andy Reid and Mahomes, how much do they want this game? They've seen how cocky the Bengals have gotten recently. Rightfully so. They've beaten the Chiefs 3 times. They've seen how Mahomes hasn't lost 3 times to another team. This isn't. This is something different. They have to beat Burrow to show that the Chiefs are still the #1 team in the AFC.
Yeah, I man, I really don't know what way to go on this game because part of me looks at it and it's like, well, the Bengals just match up like perfectly against you guys.
That's what
I
they've
mean,
shown it before. They've shown it
their
3 times.
their receiver core like should decimate you guys on the field. That's what they're supposed to do. They have a good running game they can rely on if needed. They have a fantastic quarterback. Their defense, the one thing that actually might save you a bit in this is that their pass rush is actually not. I think it's actually worse than Jacksonville's, if I remember correctly. But they don't shut down in the big games like Jacksonville has, so that might be worse. But um, they still have a pretty solid defense. They have playmakers, and so I uh, I feel like this should be the year that Joe Burrow goes and gets the Super Bowl. I feel like it should be them and the Eagles, and they beat the Eagles. But something tells me that the Chiefs are just going to find a way in this game, even if they don't earn it. However, it is like, and that probably won't even be the topic of conversation after, and probably shouldn't be. But I think they're just going to find some way, whether it's bull crap or not, to win this game.
I I think for once, and we've talked about this before, the Chiefs have gotten complacent a lot of times. They were complacent for most of this season. You could just tell they knew that they were a better team. They're like, okay, we'll just play down. Let's just barely win these games. I think for once, looking at them this postseason, and then the final Raiders game, I actually feel like it feels so similar to 2019 again. It feels like they really want to win. You can see it with Mahomes interviews. You can see it with the defensive players. Carlos Dunlap coming in. It feels so similar to 2019. The, and before this game, with a healthy Mahomes, I was feeling pretty good. I was like, okay, the Bengals aren't going to beat them 4 times in a row. This isn't happening. Andy Reid's a good enough coach; he can scheme up some plays to beat them. But then Mahomes got hurt, and I'm like, okay, I was pretty sure they could win. Now, at what level is Mahomes going to play? And to Mahomes' credit, after he got his ankle tweaked against the Jaguars in 2019, he had 2 insanely good games right after, like 400-yard games.
Yeah,
The issue is that this Bengals defense is the most underrated in the league. It is. It's people do not talk about it enough. And they're also going to try to scheme up that. I think something that might go the Chiefs' advantage is that this is going to be a different game. This is not going to be something that the Bengals have prepared for. This is going to be possibly running. It's going to be quick passes. It's going to be a system which the Bengals haven't played the Chiefs in before. They've played them with a Mahomes throwing all the time play. This will be different. This will be Mahomes throwing a lot less, or at least shorter passes. I don't know if they've schemed that one as good.
yeah. I I just I don't know. I have the feeling that they're gonna win it. I somehow, some way. I don't think they're gonna lose them 4 times in a row. And maybe it's a good thing that they lost earlier this year, and they'll take this game extremely seriously. I think this will be a big game for Mahomes. I think he will still play great. The injury news, everything I've seen has actually been pretty good
It
for what
looks
they
pretty good.
expected.
It's
Yeah,
not as bad as the last one. It's Mahomes is just sitting there taking some. He's just resting in the ice. I'm waiting for the Chiefs injury report today. I'm waiting to see if they have him even practicing at all. I'm doubting. Well, I know he's not going to be practicing. They're not going to have him.
yeah. Well, the thing is too, the Chiefs are underdogs in this game
Oh yeah,
going in. That's another huge
I
thing
think
because
they
that
need
might kind
that.
of change the mentality. And maybe it doesn't because the Bengals are probably still going to look at it as we're not supposed to be here. They didn't want us in this game. They still thought the
They're
Chiefs were
already
going to
looking
win
like
it
it.
all.
Yeah,
Like that's not
but
going to change. But the Chiefs, I think that's going to help them
look
to
at the
take this
Bengals'
more seriously.
attitude too, though.
Yeah, but the problem is that they like skipped over so many games this year getting ready for the Bengals, and they lost. That's
Yeah, I
the
mean that was fair. They said
biggest
the
problem
Bengals
I
was the
have
number one
with it.
game. They said
I
that was
don't.
the game they prepared for the whole off
Yeah,
season.
I mean, they literally looked past like months of games just to get ready for that, and they didn't win. So it's like, what's going to happen now that the team needs to beat them in the playoffs? And they didn't have all that time to prepare. I mean, unless they were doing it on the bye week, which I think would have been a huge mistake. I mean, they won
And I
against
don't think they
Jacksonville, but that
weren't.
would not have
They
been
looked
smart.
like they didn't look like the first game against Jacksonville. They actually tried.
Yeah, that
They had
was,
a real game
but
plan this
neither
time.
team just like didn't care. It was clear they were both trying.
But I mean that's a fair point. They prepared the whole off season for the Bengals. This was the game they had circled, and they lost that first one. So I mean, it is. I think Mahomes being hurt is huge against the Chiefs, but at the same time, if the Chiefs win, I think it's going to be because the fact the game plan is going to be different. I don't think the Bengals were ever preparing for a run heavy game or a screen pass game. So there's a chance that their defense, while it's built really well for a pass heavy offense, they might not be built well for a run heavy offense. We'll
Yeah,
have to we'll have to see how that goes, but I think the Chiefs are going to win. I really hope they do. I'd rather lose in the Super Bowl to either one of those teams in the NFC than lose to the Bengals 4 times. I haven't had to experience loss like that since 2012, so
yeah.
it's been a decade.
Starting to feel like the games against the Patriots if it
Yeah, I don't know.
goes that
It's
way.
like I'm talking to a person who's never seen his team in the Super Bowl about how it's like, oh man, my my team might lose to a team 4 times in a row.
Yeah.
This is awful.
Oh no, we don't get to go to the
But
Super Bowl. We're like,
I
what's
mean,
a Super
just from the
Bowl?
perspective of the Chiefs, that's the worst thing that's happened in a decade if they lose. Even
Yeah.
with Mahomes being hurt. That is a great excuse.
We had
But
Urban Meyer.
I mean, yeah, your excuses have always been better for the last decade. But with Mahomes hurt, it's still sad. It's still a big excuse. But the Chiefs should still be able to win it. It does always come down to the better team. And yeah, Mahomes is the key of the team. But you saw at that Chad Henne drive, aside from one errant throw, the rest of that drive still looked fine.
They
So this
recovered
is
well. It that just shouldn't have happened. Part of it too was the whole Chad Henne used to be on the Jaguars, and this is his moment to get
I
back at
think
the
he vaguely
franchise
mentioned
thing.
that in the press conference.
Did
Someone
he?
asked him.
Did
No, someone
he?
asked
That's
him
great.
if they asked him if that had like a factor into it. He goes, "Well, a little bit, but not I was just ready for my time in the so yeah, he was probably secretly hoping this whole time that he could
Gosh. Every
everything
player in the NFL is just like, I'm gonna get back at them
every
for
day they
something.
wake up and the Jaguars are just circled on their calendar.
That's how it feels. It's not true, but man, it's how it feels. Especially when Blaine Gabbert beat us in 2017 with the
Gosh.
Cardinals. That was dumb. So
But
dumb.
yeah, I think the Chiefs probably win.
Yeah,
I'm not very sure on that. I'm like
it
55% chance.
could
If
go
Mahomes was healthy,
either
I would
way.
have been like 60. I would have said, okay, this is the game. It's 4 times in a row. It's not happening. But
Yeah,
with Mahomes hurt, it all depends. If he's 80% or better, I think they'll win. But if he's gimpy and he can't even get out of the pocket at all, if it comes down to it, I don't know if he can just stand there like a Tom Brady-esque statue and win. We have to, I mean, this whole season was him kind of training for that, for training, staying in the pocket and delivering more methodical plays down the field. So I guess this is like the final test for him. Has he developed into a quarterback who can sit in the pocket and still dissect teams?
yeah, yeah. We'll see. It'll be a good weekend of football. Definitely won't be holding any grudges against the Chiefs at all for anything. Or yeah, not at all. 100%.
Yeah, that one Jaguars fan at the stadium said he was cheering for us. So we have one of the Duval faithful on our side.
Yeah, one. That's about it. There's no others. Maybe Doug Peterson because he's friends with Andy, but
And he was,
that's
yeah.
about it. Yeah, but usually we'd finish this by talking about predict the games, what went right. We'll actually skip both those because we already talked about the other game and we went pretty in depth on the Chiefs and Bengals. So to wrap this up, we'll just kind of talk about what's going to happen in the future with this podcast. So obviously, football season's coming to an end. We may do an episode for the Super Bowl. I don't know yet, but throughout the off season, we're gonna just kind of talk about the Jaguars, preview, their contract situations, free agency. We'll probably even talk about the Chiefs if you come on. Maybe get into divisions, other teams. Kind of do this differently, since obviously there's not going to be much to recap on games or any of that. So we'll go through free agency, the draft, just kind of preview things, and so it won't be an every week thing. We'll probably do bi-weekly or maybe once a month. We'll figure out how that works. But that's the plans for the show going forward, and we'll see what we do for the next season if we change anything around. But I do want to thank you for coming on this season for majority of episodes, I believe. I think you were on for more than Josh.
Probably 80%.
Maybe not 80, but
75.
Yeah, this is the 10th episode of the year. I think I did
He was on for
3 or 4 with him.
2 or 3, I thought.
I know he was on for 3 at least.
Easily, yeah.
Yeah, so
it's 70% at the lowest.
Something like that. Yeah, we'll be back though, and I want to just thank you all for joining us. If you got any suggestions for what you want to see, any suggestions on what you like about it, what you hate about it, any of that, let us know, and we'll make sure to respond angrily, of course. But appreciate y'all joining us today for the final episode of On the Prowl presented by Cardiac Cats in our first season. And we'll be back in the coming weeks to talk about this offseason and what moves lie ahead for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Peace.
See you later.